Today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the details you want and asked for in my first day of seed starting. I'm going to share with you what seeds that I'm starting, the equipment that I'm going to be using to start it, the technique that I'm going to be using, my planning, my seed starting room setup, the mix that I use my own. The other night I had an ADHD hyperfixation and I did this. If y'all are following me on Instagram, and I think I even did a post on YouTube about it, it was my seed starting organization. There are 4 of these bad boys. These ones originally came into the gardening market. I believe it was Jess from Roots and Refuge. She's the first one who introduced everybody to this, to my knowledge. And it's amazing. I used to use these, and these things are fan-freaking-tastic. My dad made these, so I can't give you a link for them. But they're made for canning jars. They fit perfectly, 12 quarts, and I just love them. It was really easy. They slid right under my shelf in my bedroom, and I could just see them. They were out in the open, but that doesn't work so well here in Missouri. There's a little bit of extra pest pressure here. Pantry moths, stuff that just didn't exist in Washington. So I decided to be a little bit more careful, and I bought these. I even labeled all of them with what's inside. Hyperfixation is a thing, folks. So each one has 16 compartments in there, and you can just organize them however you want to organize them. I love these things. I'm obsessed. I bought 4. I may end up getting a 5th, but I don't know if it's necessary at this point. Oh, let me show you my bean one, because that one is awesome also, because obviously beans and peas don't fit in here, and I know that that's a lot of struggle for people who use this sort of thing. So let me go grab it. This masterpiece, okay? I will link everything that I'm talking about in this video. I will make sure to link it down below so you can find it easily. There might be some things that I'm not able to find, and if I can't find this almost exactly, it's just Hobby Lobby. These things are removable, so you can make it kind of whatever size that you want to make it, but it's great because they have these nice wide openings. There's 8 of them, so you can separate them out. I have my beans and my peas in here, and I have them separated out as far as drying beans. Well, their primary uses, like drying bean versus fresh beans, pole beans versus bush beans, and I've got the peas in here. I separated them out according to, some of them grow really tall, some of them are shorter, so I was just able to really organize them, and it stays nice and tight. Then once I got everything organized, I made this. And this is a calendar. I looked up all of the planting dates for all the seeds that I have, whether it was on the packet or if I had to Google it. I just found the weeks to frost for each of the seeds that I have. Well, each of the variety of seeds that I have, each of the genre of seeds that I have. I didn't look up every single tomato, but I just looked up tomatoes, cucumbers, stuff like that. And then I made this little calendar for each week and figured out what my last frost date was and input all of those here. And I just, cause like I have a hard time focusing when there's just a bunch of random stuff, I just colored it different various colors so that I could differentiate between each seed and I don't have to think too much about it. If that wasn't enough, I went ahead and counted up all of the seeds that I'm gonna be starting today, right? And then I counted how many of each of those seed varieties that I have, wrote them all down. Like the hot peppers, I have 30 different varieties, we're kind of obsessed. And then like the green cabbage, I have 9 different varieties. So I counted those out, and then next to that, see, this is how many seed varieties I have, and then right here I wrote down how many cells that I want to devote to each of the seed starts. And then over here I wrote down the days to germination. And the reason that I wrote that on there is that when you're seed starting, I find it to be incredibly helpful so you don't have a bunch of half-empty trays laying around. It's helpful to plant things to the best of the ability with similar germination rates. So like the cabbage and the fennel, they have very similar germination rates. So I could put them on the same tray because the cabbage is 3 to 5 days, but the fennel is 5 to 7 days. So pretty darn similar. There won't be any half-empty trays for too long. But like I wouldn't want to plant something that has a 5 to 7 day germination rate with something that is 14 to 28 days, because that's just going to be frustrating to have nothing in half of your tray and then the other one is like this tall, and then you're just left with 2 half-empty seed trays. You know what I'm saying? And then if that wasn't enough, I went ahead and calculated how many trays that's going to take up. It is 7 trays plus onions and leeks. So I just drew out each of the seed trays and I filled in what is going to be going in each row. So I really don't have to think about it. It's a little bit of planning in the beginning, but then I don't end up frustrated and having to bust out like half a tray or not being able to fill up the tray that I wanted to fill up, and then you're just scrambling to throw stuff in the half empty tray and it's just not as organized. So This is my first time doing this sort of organization method, but I feel like it works really well with my scattered self. When I first started planning this video, I was under the belief that my little seed starting container here had my seed starting mix in it. But after looking at it, it is actually potting mix. So I was just gonna tell you what my seed starting mixture was, but since that's a thing, I'm gonna show you. And for 7 seed trays, we don't need a ton, so I'm just gonna use this giant pot because my seed starting container is otherwise engaged. I'm gonna show you part 1 of my shame, and that is this. Oh, it's so windy. Okay, so these are all of the leftover seed trays from last year that I neglected and did not fill up, as well as my green stalk planter that I partially filled and then got derailed when I didn't have enough potting mix to fill them all up, and then I just gave up. Welcome to my brain. There is no light in here, I apologize, but this is a little area. It's like a lean-to off of the side of the garage, and so far it's been a mixture of things. That is actually a milking stanchion for goats, and it's open on the other side. There's no door on the other side. But this is kind of where, if you guys followed me from the beginning, you'll know that we had, when we first moved here, the home came with a rodent problem, and we did not know that. So we never had an issue with that in Washington. It was never a problem to just leave Mylar bags out. We never had a problem with it. So the mice ended up getting into it, and it has become chicken feed. So it's just in here as storage. We have the excess. These two. We lost like 500 pounds of food. Over here is where we have kept all of our gardening stuff. I got the peat moss, the perlite, vermiculite, starting mixes, all the things, and you know, empty water bottles, stuff like that, as well as all of our appliance packages until, you know, it's too late to be able to return anything, just in case something happens. I didn't think about where I was gonna do this at. Eventually, hopefully very soon, I'm planning on building like a workbench in here, something super rustic and basic, just something that I can start seeds on so I don't have to do it in the dining room. That looks like a pretty good spot, right? Down here I have these bins here. I don't know why there's paper towels in here. It probably just ended up there in the move. But I've got my vermiculite, perlite, peat moss, and then some garden lime. That's all you gotta do. You can use cocoa coir, I think that's how you pronounce it, instead of the peat moss if you choose. And if you use the cocoa coir, you don't have to use the lime. And for my scooper, I just use an old coffee can. This recipe is a ratio. It works with any amount that you want to make. Can I get you higher? That's better. Yep. Oh no! Well, the floor is going to retain a lot of moisture. Crap! Where did I even put those scissors? Just friggin' head up. Oh, good nightmares. Now that I have a mouthful of peat moss, let's do this. For this ratio, you need 8 parts peat moss. That's the main base of this. 1 part vermiculite, 1 part peat moss to 8 parts peat moss. You can use whatever ratio you want, whatever scoop you want. That's just the ratio. Then you're gonna add a tablespoon of garden lime per gallon. So you do have to kind of know the ratio that you're doing. I think that's gonna do it. So I'm just gonna do 4 parts, or 4 of these. About a half bucket. You don't have to be exact. It's just kind of rough. I think that's probably 3 gallons. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. Then, mix it up. Grab some vermiculite, we'll need that inside, and a water bottle.
Stop laying eggs. Now, this has been a hot topic, okay?
So I got all the seeds organized. It is that time of the day. I gotta peace out outside, go feed the chickens, and I got some water boiling. I'll share with you why in just a minute. But when all that's done, I'll meet you back here and we are Gonna get to the nitty-gritty details. I have the sink filling up with water, so I'm gonna wash all of the trays, and it's time to go ahead and pour the boiling water over these. I don't know how necessary it is, but a lot of people, most people in fact that I've seen, say that pouring hot water over it will really help kill a lot of the stuff that might be growing inside of there, so I just do it. Just enough to saturate it. You don't want it to be soupy, but you want to make sure it's all moistened to where you can hold it in a ball, but it's not like when you squeeze it, it's not oozing water. That should be good. I don't want to show you what I mean by holding it into a ball because it's really hot. So we're gonna let this cool off. I'm just gonna wash those things, just Dawn dish soap and a bunch of vinegar in the sink, and I'm just gonna scrub them up. It's the next day. I'm still wearing the same shirt because it's already dirty, so why not? I ended up spending all last night writing up all the tags that I need and just chilling out watching videos. So, and it had gotten dark and I figured I may as well just wait until the morning because the lighting is a little better. So, you wanna know what I'm growing? So, I have all of these organized based on what tray they're going in. So, let's do it. Okay, so we have some Romanesco broccoli. These ones are pretty old, 2016, so we'll see how they germinate. And then I have this other one. It is also a Romanesco, but it's a different brand. I figured why not? I have limited broccoli seeds, so I have a couple of these Solstice broccoli and Calabrese green sprouting broccoli. So as somebody who is keto, I definitely need to buy a little bit more broccoli seeds. That's all I have. And then I have a purple of Sicily cauliflower and a snowball cauliflower. Only 2 of those. In the past, I didn't really put a whole lot of garden space towards broccoli and cauliflower. I don't really know why. They're fantastic low-carb veggie, so I definitely need to be getting a couple more of these seeds, and I'll be planting them probably in a couple weeks, get a little succession going on. Then we have some Savoy cabbage, Perfection drumhead, Marner. I'm only planting 3 of these because these guys, if you watch my garden videos from last year, these ones have literally never sprouted. I just can't bring myself to throw them away, so I try a few every year. Never were. Gloria of Unikin cabbage, Chinook Island cabbage, Brunswick, no fancy pictures on that one, Haas Tools Bobcat cabbage, Copenhagen Market from MI Gardener, Cheers cabbage, Charleston Wakefield cabbage. I'm all about the low carb here. Well, for myself. I grow other stuff for hubby. This is a self-saved cherry bomb. And then we got some really hot ones. I asked hubby what color of green pepper he preferred and were there any specific peppers he wanted to make sure that I grew a lot of. He just said he doesn't have a preference on the color of the bell peppers, but the hotter the better. So we have some, it's a dattel. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it says blazing hot, so it should be pretty good. And then serrano pepper, apocalypse scorpion, Carolina reaper, habanero Caribbean orange, Tabasco. That's obviously going to be a fermenting project coming up here soon. Thai red chili. Those are one of our favorites. Bahut Jolkia. This one says hot, hot, hot. 1,000 Scovilles. Obviously that varies depending on growing conditions. And then a Hungarian hot wax. Sugar Rush Peach. Buena Malata. These ones are really good. And they're not too spicy, but they are kind of spicy. Cayenne long thin pepper. Anaheim chili. Big Jim. Pasilla Bajo? Bajo? Sorry. I don't know how to pronounce these things. Cardi West Indies Red. Ancho Grande. If you couldn't tell, we love our peppers. Chinese 5-color. Whatever this is. Bequinho Yellow Chiltepin pepper. A lemon drop. Bequinho. This one's a red one. And then Jimmy Nardello Got Jimmy Nardello, a mushroom red, just jalapeno, Zapoteg jalapeno, and a Craig's Grande. I know that Living Traditions Homestead is pretty near where I am, and in some of their videos they had referenced that the Craig's Grande did phenomenal for them. Purple Beauty, a hot cayenne long thin, chocolate beauty, bell pepper, a poblano pepper, Ozark Giant, big red pepper, sunbright pepper, coral bell pepper, Keystone Resistant Giant Bell Pepper, shishito, and some kind of paprika I don't know how to pronounce. And these ones we're gonna go ahead and dehydrate and just make paprika powder out of them. I'm really excited about that project. So then we have Florence fennel. I haven't really been able to find any other varieties of fennel, but so we're gonna grow some of those. Hilton Chinese cabbage, Napa cabbage, and a spring crisp Chinese cabbage. And if, in case you're wondering, we're gonna be making a lot of kimchi this year. Catskill Brussels sprouts, a Long Island improved. This is like the normal one that you can find most places. A red acre cabbage. These things are so beautiful. Calabose, Red Express. And then we're gonna try some Tamarillo. It says it's a dwarf. No, it ain't. Toothache cabbage. I think it's Spilanthes. And then a Gaillardia Indian blanket and a Gaillardia lollipop. Verbena. Long purple eggplant. Fun fact, I've never grown eggplant and I've only eaten it once. But I'm hoping that it'll be, I'm pretty sure it's low carb. I could be wrong on that, but even if it's not, there's some fun stuff that you can do with eggplant. I think it was like eggplant parmesan, and there's a bunch of stuff you can do with it. So I figure it can take up 12 spaces in my garden, and we'll see how it goes. Rosita eggplant, a real black, and a black beauty. And then I'm gonna try growing celery for the first time ever. We'll see how it goes, wish me luck. And then we have a giant Prague celery, but really you can tell it's really a celeriac. And then a monster pelagi celeriac, and a Mars pelleted. And then the last two, we have a Colorado mix of yarrow and a cerise queen yarrow. So we have a fairly decent variety, and like I said, I just went through and discovered all of the ideal starting times on these based on my last frost, and I plugged them into my calendar, so that's why we're starting these ones this week. Tomatoes are gonna be next week. I don't know if I'm gonna film that or not. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. I don't have my list with me, but there's tomatoes and quite a few other things. So let me know if you guys would be interested in that. If I get enough people that say, yay, please do it, I will probably do a bonus video next week with that, because I do have a fermented February video coming out on Tuesday. Oh, and that one's gonna be making koji rice, so that you can make all different kinds of Japanese ferments like miso, and we're gonna be making shoyu with it, but not in the same video. So you can make all different kinds of those fantastic, super umami Asian ferments with the koji rice. It's just kind of, it's a start to what you can do with a bunch of other stuff. So let's get to starting these. I'm gonna show you guys two trays. One is gonna be onions and the other one's gonna be kind of a mishmash. And then I'm just gonna do the rest of these off camera because that's long and boring. For the first one, we're gonna go ahead and fill up the tray that I'm gonna be using the onions for. We're just gonna spread out the mixture the best we can. If you don't have a lot of experience filling up these trays, the outside edge really, it doesn't get as filled as the inside one, so you have to be kind of extra cautious, or extra, I don't know, you just have to notice. And yeah, you just have to make sure you're filling in the outsides. Paying attention to filling the outsides, how about that? And normally I would do this outside on my deck, the filling part at least, just to mitigate any mess, but it's nasty weather out there and I don't want to be out. And then you just poke them down. A fair amount of pressure. You don't want to go crazy, but back them down. The idea with this is that you want the soil to be, you don't want it to be so loose because that will make transplanting much more difficult because it's just gonna fall apart. And then if it's too firm, the roots will have a hard time taking hold. I'm not poking it super hard, just enough. It's hard to explain the firmness that you want to use. I don't know. Then I'm gonna go through and fill it up again, but I'm not gonna compact it. They're probably a little less than 1/4 of an inch, maybe like 1/3 of an inch below the top. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing with the other tray, just while I got my hands dirty. For the onions, typically I did, up until this year, I have done a different method. So this method is new to me, and the reason that I decided to do that, I'm planting them in these really teeny tiny, I think this is a 128 cell tray, is because, okay, so I used to do the method where you filled up the whole tray with dirt and then you just made like troughs, or you just sprinkle the seed on top and then they just grow. I didn't like that because I don't like separating out seedlings. It is so tedious and boring. I would rather just do it here. And then I have plugs that I can transplant wherever I want to. So I decided to try this method for this year, and I see no reason why it won't work. These are technically root crops, but they don't grow the roots until like late spring, early summer. So them being in here shouldn't be an issue. Just grab your local pokey thing and poke shallow holes. Kind of just until you meet the resistance, I guess. With a light, I'm barely even poking them at all. And then that underneath layer that's much more firm will stop it. I'm going to aim to put 1 seed in each hole. I think I forgot to mention, if you notice, I did wash my hands and dry them off very well. It's probably not the end of the world, but I figure if I'm going to be putting the seeds in my hand, if it's wet and it's dirty, and then I'm putting it back into the seed packet, I don't want to introduce any extra moisture. So I don't always, but I'll usually try and get my hands at least dried off. So it's really helpful to just get all of your seed trays ready and then start your planting, so you're not going in between. Like I said, I don't know how much that affects things, but I feel like it does. Alrighty, now for the vermiculite. I can't remember if I mentioned earlier, but I use vermiculite sprinkled on top. I learned that trick from my dad. He's like a legit flower farmer, and so he taught me that trick. It helps to hold in the moisture, and then it helps to keep the moisture on top where the seedling needs it, and then it also helps to mitigate any kind of algae that might grow, any kind of little mold spores, even bugs, even some like little mites that can get on here. So it's something that I do now. My vermiculite's soaking wet. I need to go get another one. Thankfully I have a backup. I just grabbed some from the garage, and then it's not much. It's like a little sprinkle. Then I'm going to move all the seed packets out of the way because it will have some overspray. This thing is the best thing ever. If you want to avoid getting carpal tunnel, get this. Because this needs more water. And then we're just going to get the tops of these guys nice and wet. Be very careful in the beginning because the vermiculite will want to fly all over the place. So you just give it a nice light dusting until it gets wet enough that it won't just fly all over the place. And then you're gonna wanna kind of drench it a bit. Don't go crazy, don't go overboard, but you wanna get it enough because moisture is one of the things that will really help these guys sprout. There we go. And then it just goes under the grow lights. We're just gonna do one more together, and then hubby needs to take over this area. So I'm gonna finish these up this evening, but it's the same exact process. If I showed you all 7 of these, you'd lose your mind. So this one, we're gonna do the one that's kind of a mishmash. So it was the last, like I had all the other ones set up, and then this was just what was left. It was the last ones. So we're gonna do 4 rows we're gonna do them this way. The other, oh, I forgot to tag that one. I gotta go back and tag that one. And speaking of tags, I'm kind of particular with my tags. I mark every single one, front and back, pretty detailed. And in this stage, I just make one marker for all of the variety. And so I'll do, like, I'll put a red acre cabbage sticker here, and then the next, I think I have 3 varieties, so I'm gonna split this up into 3 different varieties. So at the start, this is number 1, right? And then when I add in another variety, well, maybe it's here, right? I'll put the next one here, and that's just my pattern. That's how I know it starts here and it goes that direction. And then as I get to new varieties, I'll just put 1 tag. I used to mark every single one in this stage, but number 1 is very overwhelming to do all at once. And number 2, what if they don't make it and then I'm just stuck with a tag? Also, I know a lot of people use permanent markers, and they always end up fading by the end of the season. So then people started using some kind of a specialized garden pen, and I'm sure that works fine. I use a pencil. I just use a mechanical pencil. It works fantastic. It stays on as long as I want it to stay on. It does not get faded out with the sun. And at the end of the season, I can wash these tags up, erase the pencil, and it's ready for the next season. So I would highly recommend it. I will link the tags that I use down below. I'll link the trays. I'll link both of these. I'll link everything I can find links for. I will leave them for you guys down below so you can find them super easy. This I got at Home Depot, but if I can find one on Amazon, I will link that one for you as well. I'll find the one that has the best ratings and appears to be good, but just know that that one I wouldn't have particular experience with. So this one is gonna be 3 different kinds of red cabbage, 1 type of tamarillo, toothache plant, 2 rows of gaillardia, 1 row of verbena, and 2 rows of eggplants. No, pardon me, 3 rows of eggplants. I think I have 4. I have 4 varieties. So let's get to planting. It's going to be exactly the same. Really the only difference when you're starting seeds, if you're doing beans or peas, which I don't recommend starting ahead of time, at least definitely not the beans. I learned that last year very well. They do not like to transplant. I did transplanting, and then I also did direct sow, and I direct sowed probably 3 weeks after I started the direct sow, or started the transplants. And the direct sow blew them out of the water within a couple of weeks, and they were the ones that were producing, and most of the transplants died. I have had some luck with peas, so I wouldn't necessarily shy away from starting peas. Lettuce would be something that you would start in a tray if you wish to. Those ones you literally sprinkle on top. You do not cover them. They have to have light in order to germinate. They're one of the few, I'm not aware of any other seeds that require that, but I do know that lettuce requires light, and if you cover them up with soil, they're gonna struggle to sprout. So, and unless I can think of anything else to say that I didn't already, I'm just gonna zoom through this just so you can see a second match of that, as well as how I set up my seed tags. A couple things that popped into my head while I'm doing this that I find to be helpful is, as I'm doing each variety, I fill in the hole. And the reason that I do that is so that I don't accidentally go to the wrong hole. It's just simply to, my scattered self, it just works well that way. And another thing that you can do if you're prone to getting distracted, or if you find that you're just doubling up or missing cells, I find it really helpful to count as I'm dropping each one in there, so that I know where I left off. If I get, it probably won't help if I get pulled away because my memory's not that good, but if I get distracted for a second, I'm like, where did I put that? Especially with the dark colored seeds, they can be tough to find in there. So 2 helpful tips for you. Also, when you're working with itty bitty, teeny weeny, tiny seeds, it's helpful to do them one at a time. You put the little pile in your hand and you kind of just use your finger to isolate one seed and then put it in the cells. And that's also where counting comes in, because you're not going to remember. So I find that very helpful. Instead of trying to, like with the larger seeds, like cabbage, stuff like that, it's really easy to grab, 3, 4, 5 seeds and just easily be able to distribute one at a time. And even if you accidentally do a couple, it's easy to pick it out. But this stuff looks like a piece of soil. So I would definitely encourage you, if you're newer or anybody, to just do one seed in your hand at a time. Well, in your fingertips. So we're all done with this one. This is my seed starting setup. It's just a shelf that I got at Costco, and I have these awesome lights, which I'll show you in just a minute, and it's just in my appliance pantry. And this is also where the kefir went to die because I neglected it, but I couldn't bring myself to put it away. Throw it away. And anybody who has gardening seed setting up area, I'm sure you can relate to crap just accumulates here during the off season. So a little bit of cleanup here. So just put the onion seeds here. Ooh, let me go get the tag. So the reason I like these bulbs. Oh, I unplugged those. Ah, hold on, I need to get the upper layer. There we go. Look at that. These are multi-spectrum bulbs, and I have found with time that, well, the website says, but it took me a while to actually trust it, but you don't have to put these directly on top of it. The bulbs that I used to use were just the regular shop light ones, and those ones did not do well. I did not like them. They did okay, but the best way that I can describe it is getting greenhouse plastic from your local hardware store versus going online and ordering greenhouse plastic. You're gonna get okay results with the other one, but it doesn't allow enough light to get through, so it's not going to grow as well as it would otherwise. But with these, they're multi-spectrum, so they're more designed to imitate the sun's light. And the difference, once I used these lights versus the other ones, night and day. No question, they were incredible. The results with these things are phenomenal, and I even turned my dad onto them, and he loves them too, and he's a flower farmer and he does a lot of seed starting. For those of you who are just starting to get into gardening or you're just thinking about it, the reason that I start these seeds ahead of time is that it extends my growing season, because most of these seeds, for example, they can't be put outside like in my garden until a little bit after the first frost. So if I can't start these until the middle of May, if I start these guys inside in the end of February, that's going to extend my growing season by like 3 months. So it enables me to be able to grow a much larger garden. It allows me to be able to succession sow and get a double crop, sometimes even triple. And some crops, you're not going to do that. The squash, it can be finicky. Like I mentioned earlier, the beans, a lot of the root crops, stuff like that, you're not often going to start them ahead of time. Some of them you can, but I just find it's easier to do it direct sow for most of them. I will start some squash, but none of these are peppers. So these ones do not require a heat mat, but for the peppers, absolutely. And for tomatoes, you're gonna wanna use a heat mat if you have one available. It just helps with keeping them warm. They're warm weather crops. They really enjoy heat, and they require, peppers particularly require a certain soil temperature in order to germinate. So if you mimic the soil temperature that they need with these handy dandy little heat mats that are designated for gardening and seed growing, you're just gonna have, they'll sprout much, much sooner, and you'll have happier plants. So I have 3 of these. So I know all my tomatoes aren't going to be able to get them, but the peppers definitely will. You don't have to leave them on indefinitely. You can take them off after a certain period of time. Once they're all germinated, maybe get like a decent size, you can take them off of there. The tomatoes really only need it to germinate, and they don't need it. You can absolutely do it without. You just have better results if you put a little bit of a heat underneath it. As far as watering goes, before they sprout, I'm just gonna top water with that little handy dandy spray bottle I showed you whenever it needs it. If it starts to look a little bit dry, or maybe every other day, just give it a little spritz on top. That's all it needs. You don't need to bottom water. But once these do start to germinate, I'm gonna lift these up. I'm gonna water them with a watering can inside of the tray, so then it can just take up what it needs, and I'm not gonna overwhelm it. I'm not gonna flood it. And then give it half an hour or so and just dump out the excess water, so you're not going to get any waterlogged and you're not going to get any kind of waterborne ickiness that you might get if you left it in there. So hopefully I've been able to share with you everything that a beginner could want to know about seed starting, and maybe I gave some ideas to some veteran gardeners as well. If you have any tips on how you like to start seeds, what you're starting, what you got going on your homestead, make sure you let us all know down below. We would love to learn from you. And if you want a little bit more garden inspiration, I will link right here my last seed starting video that I did. I think it was about 2 years ago. So peace out, sauerkraut.